All right, Rick, welcome to the show, man. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're a super busy guy, and I'm really excited to get into some really interesting topics. So
Great.
appreciate it, man.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to start with something that I heard you speak about on another program because I've been doing my research here. It's been really fun kind of digging into your information that I'm a huge fan of because I feel like we've got a similar journey. But you were talking about the difference between identity-based thinking versus being goal-driven. And before I get your answer, it just made me sort of reminisce about my journey. And as we come up through, the PGA and our careers as young coaches, of when I sort of flipped the switch to be less ego-driven and more of having a servant attitude. So expand on that if you would, and then tell me sort of when did you think that shift happened for you?
Oh, I love the question. I'm going to answer kind of two different ways from how you posed it and then how you finished it there. Is that I believe, we're in service, right? We're literally, people are paying us for a service. And so I think at first when I certainly wanted an outcome for my students. And yes, I wanted them to win tournaments and all that stuff, which was very much outcome oriented, which is fine to start with. But I was finding maybe I wasn't as connected to the lesson, or I wasn't actually fulfilling their needs as much. And I wasn't asking them enough of what they were wanting and stuff like that. I just assumed things, and I was in my own little, I'm going to tell them a million things about the golf swing because I thought that's what they wanted. So I think the first part was the shift of what am I bringing to that lesson? And it certainly they want to play better. I get that. But I think what they're also getting is the experience. Right. So I think you and I are going to bring energy and communication and listening to them in the present moment and just being involved so they feel like, oh, somebody's actually finally listening to me and being present with that. So that's one way I look at it. Back to that kind of the question between like goals and identity. I certainly talk about goals a lot. I think goals are drivers for motivation and focus. Yet I think there's a disconnect with some. So one little bit of an exercise I do with a lot of my tournament players is that before a tournament I ask, so what is your goal? And I leave it very vague because I don't want to lead them in any direction. And let's say I get somebody who says it's very outcome. I want to be in the top 10. I want to shoot under par. I go, great. Let's start with that. And then I kind of ask them like, well, what type of golfer do you need to be? And they kind of look at me like, huh? What the heck are you talking about, golfer? But that could be strategy based. Hey, this golf course is narrow and I need to really keep my tee shots in the fairway. And I'm going to do that by being more focused in my pre-shot routine. Right now we're starting to talk more behaviors. And that's what I think somebody can control more than they can control the outcome. But then the final question is, what type of person do you need to be? So that's the identity question. What type of person? And then they really go, what the heck are you talking about now, Rick? And I go, well, let's think about it. What's the best mindset that you could bring out? To achieve that goal, what kind of mindset you're going to have? What kind of beliefs you're going to have? What kind of emotions you're going to have? And they go, huh. And sometimes I'll turn around and say, when you played your best, what were you thinking? What were you feeling?
What did you look like?
Totally, right?
Yeah.
And then they start going, well, I had confidence and yeah, I had a good spring in my step and I was really thinking clear and I was being positive. I go, great. So you already have in you what we need for the outcome goals. But let's really reaffirm the type of person you're going to bring out to that golf course. And I think that's been a shift in my coaching, I would say probably in the last 5 years, really hard. I think before that, I kind of sidestepped it a little bit. But now I go all in. I said, what you can control is your mindset and your behaviors. Let's start with mindset. How are we going to be? Hey, Rick, I'm going to be focused. How I'm going to be focused, I'm going to have clarity in my visualization and my pre-shot routine. If I can visualize this shot at an 8 out of 10, I know I'm clear and I can go. Now we got something we can work on, right? Because I want people to have a locus of control that they have something they can actually do to get closer to the goal, not just say, yeah, I want to win. I go, that's nice, but let's get down to how we're going to do that. So that's kind of where I look at identity.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because I think what we're talking about and how you coach the mental side is very much sort of personal development driven, but it's such applicable to our life, but also golf and how we coach, right? And that made me think of sort of some of the things that I hear you say on the podcast and then in some of your interviews is, really to be the best instructor for our players, we have to get the most out of them. In my opinion, we have to be the best version of ourselves, right? So how do we become that person that we want to be? And the thing that I always like to talk about on this podcast is sort of daily habits, right? Gaining momentum, things that are going to push us to be our best selves, which we can share with our students. So what does a daily routine, or what does your morning look like? 'Cause I know you've talked about meditation. Do you still do that?
Sure.
And just kind of take us through what a perfect day for Rick would look like to be your best self.
Awesome. No, and I thank you for talking about kind of the personal development within golf. I think you and I are looking at ways to certainly make people play better golf, no question. But we know golf is a vehicle for life. And if we can teach them some things that's going to help their golf game that spills over to the rest of their life and makes them a better parent, makes them a better business person, fantastic. I think that's a win-win, right? Mm-hmm. And you hit it on the head, is that the habits that we have, right, are going to be these consistent behaviors. So I just say, am I serving myself with the habits I have? And so I've made plenty of mistakes, and I'm tweaking as we go. Yeah. So I look at, especially in our society now, where we're allowing the environment to tell us how we're supposed to feel. I want to flip it around and say, wait, I get to choose. At least for me, probably the first hour of my day, I do honestly get to choose what I want to do with it. Okay. And so let's look at ways that's going to help kind of nourish myself and get me ready for those challenges for that day. And so for me, a lot of it has to do with exercise, form of meditation, and a form of gratitude. So exercise, this is before COVID. I wake up at 5:08 in the morning. I'm at the gym when it gets open at 5:30. In LA, no gym's open. So do some stuff at home, do some yoga, stuff like that. I feel alive when I take care of my body in that way. The shifts, so the shifts that I made in the last few years is certainly meditation and mindfulness is, I think, an important tool we can utilize. I found what worked best for me was a form of guided visualization of kind of seeing what that perfect day was going to do and unfold, but not always about, again, back to the outcome, like, oh yeah, this is going to happen. It's like, okay, how am I going to show up in that lesson? How am I going to show up in that corporate speech? And how am I going to show up when I'm talking to Colin later about his tournament? That's back to what you and I are talking about already. It's like, what's the version I want to bring to that? And that has been the shift for me from a visualization standpoint, is visualizing the person I'm going to be that day. And how am I going to deal with the crap that may hit the fan? That is something that definitely helped. Right. And I think part of that is, the last part would be the gratitude. Is we now have plenty of research to show that if I write 3 things down in the morning that I'm grateful for, it certainly shifts my state in that moment, right? I'm grateful, which is a extremely empowering emotion. But I'm now going to be looking at the world in a different way of what other things could I be grateful for that day? That's my filter. We're bombarded by negativity. We're bombarded what's wrong with the world. And I'm trying to combat that a little bit with saying, hey, I'm going to set the tone for the day. What are 3 things that I'm thankful for and grateful for? And they can't be something I've written about before. Now I got to start thinking. And sometimes they're little things. Yeah. Sometimes they're little things. That's your gratitude journal that you speak about? Correct.
How long have you been doing that? And what does it look like? Is it just a little notebook? And where do you keep it?
It's kind of in this day planner journal that has certain goals in it already, but on the bottom it has gratitude 1, 2, 3. The bottom, so it's built into already the journal itself. Gotcha. That has a lot to do with also goals and objectives for the day. But I'll tell you, the gratitude is actually more important than putting the goals down for me.
So describe what your meditation looks like, because there's a lot of forms. I've been dabbling in the last probably 6 to 8 months with the Waking Up app with Sam Harris, which I know a lot of people have talked about, Scott Fawcett and some guys are talking about. And I even tell my students to do it. If I can get them to do it, I think it would be super helpful. So what do you do? Is it on your own, or is it sort of guided mindfulness?
Yeah, it's guided.
Visualization.
Yeah, it's guided. There's an author, and I'll call him a teacher, but he's a speaker. His name is Dr. Joe Dispenza. He wrote a book called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, which was extremely influential to me. He's written 4 or 5 now national bestsellers. And it was just a downloaded app that I have on the phone, and the version's 23 minutes long. I don't always do the 23 minutes. There's a slice of about 11 minutes in the middle that is really what I like more from it, because there's a form of getting my mind and body ready for the visualization. But that meat of it is really going through the best version of myself and the intention that I want to bring to that. So my mind, it races a lot like a lot of people. So I found that use of time of having somebody guide me through visualization and keeping my mind a little bit busy was the best for me. I've had other players that they use Headspace and Calm and stuff like that. And it's just an awareness tool, right? We're just trying to create awareness of our thoughts, non-judgmentally, refocus and shift.
Yeah, that's great. And how often are you working out? You work out after you do the meditation, or?
No, how it worked out for my lifestyle, I have 3 kids and 2 dogs, and it would be the physical fitness stuff would happen first. Now, I know a lot of people say meditation should happen first because the brain waves are lower. That's fine. For me, I had to get to the gym on time, get back 45 minutes, and then I'm 6:20ish, 6:30. I'm doing 23 minutes max. It's usually about 11 minutes. And then at 7 o'clock in the morning, the household erupts. So we got plenty of stuff happening. Then, it becomes a little bit different.
So what are you doing nowadays with like your teaching schedule? I know you're traveling on tour now with Colin, as we'll kind of get into later on, but how much are you teaching, coaching? I know you're doing a lot of speaking. What's sort of your schedule look like nowadays? It's got to be crazy.
Sure. Yeah, I've been completely blessed with Colin's success and the notoriety that's brought, and a lot of opportunities, and extremely, again, grateful for those things. I think what had shifted even before COVID is I was already shifting my business to be more online anyways. Even though I'm a swing coach and I still have some players, juniors, college players that I'm still their swing coach, as with Colin, I don't really take on any new swing instruction. I am very passionate about the mental side, personal development side, and I found that I was starting to build a lot of momentum with that. And with technology, like with Zoom, I'm doing coaching. I have people in Canada and across the country, and it's been awesome to be at home in my back office and be able to have a business, a thriving business that I didn't have to rely on a facility. COVID hits here in Los Angeles, a lot of restrictions. I wasn't allowed to teach for 5 months at a golf course. So I was fortunate. I had already built a Zoom platform, and guess what? Colin's success, more things happen.
Yeah.
I'm doing at least 30 Zoom sessions a week at home.
Wow.
But I don't have to travel, which is great.
Yeah.
The facility that I was at, a small little public course here in Los Angeles area, finally reopened for coaching. So I'm just doing like Saturdays here and there. But we'll see. I mean, travel has been fantastic with Colin. So I like having a lot of balls in the air. So it's been great.
Yeah, I mean, you got, just doing research on you, man, you got to be the most diverse and busiest golf professional, teaching professional. Like you're the Swiss Army knife of like the golf business right now. It's fantastic, man. But yeah, I could see it. You were ahead of the game. Like you were prepared for the lockdown. We were out 6 weeks. And I did a lot of FaceTime lessons and whatnot, but I mean, I got an app and do a few online things, but man, if you're in that space already, like you had to be just like hitting the ground running, because everybody's still playing golf. Like our golf course is as busy as ever. It's amazing how golf is surviving for sure, which is, we're very, very blessed to be able to still teach and coach.
Definitely.
So yeah. So let's dig into a little bit of your personal development background and some of your influences. And you kind of jumped ahead with Dr. Joe. That's a guy that I hadn't actually heard of, which is shocking because as we talked before we started recording, we've got a lot of similar influences with, Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy, Tony Robbins. I'm really jealous that you actually went to a couple live events with Tony that I never got to do. So talk a little bit about your influences. And it came at an early age, like 16 years old. You're already asking for programs. Like you're way ahead of the game there, man.
Yeah.
So tell us how who influenced you, and then sort of how that pushed you in a direction of mental coaching.
Yeah, it's interesting. Again, thanks for the question. when I was 16, I was an athlete. I would consider myself a pretty good athlete. I played other sports. Golf was the last thing I was introduced to. And I was obsessed with getting better. And, you just start seeing a few things here and there. And Dennis Waitley had this thing about champions and about winning. And I go, oh, okay, that's interesting. It wasn't sports minded, but he said he worked with Olympians. So that kind of caught my attention. And then before you know it, Tony Robbins' Unlimited Power comes out. And I go, oh, he's talking about Andre Agassi. He's like, well, they're athletes. And so I think it was driven certainly from a performance standpoint for my own sports first. And then as I had struggles dealing with even poor performances in golf, I'm very open is that I went to counseling because I couldn't take, shooting 80 and I had a lot of frustrations and stuff like that. And I didn't know how to deal with it. I'll be honest with you. And so seeking out some of these experts in personal development did help me go along the right path for sure. And then as I got deeper into psychology, I was just fascinated with why am I thinking this and how is this affecting me? And then also the psychology of my students. When they come to a lesson T, understanding they're coming with anxiety, they're coming with a lot of their own limiting beliefs. I go, gosh, that's helpful to help them feel at ease and stuff. So it started to evolve both ways, but there's no question it was first from my own performance in sports. And then I saw benefits from it. There's no question. And so that led to more and more. And like the Tony Robbins, I got to do the, walking across the hot coals. And,
the fire walking. That's
the
crazy.
And so, and I think I'm open to a lot of different things because I know you and I are probably similar here. It's like the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know anything.
Exactly. That's very well said. I say that to people all the time. When you were like 30, you thought you knew everything. By the time you're 45, you're like, I know nothing.
and I know you talked about kind of my background, kind of the Swiss Army knife type stuff, but I believe I'm an expert in some of those pieces, but not all by any means. Like fitness and stuff like that. I know enough to have a conversation, but I'm not an expert, right? But I think as coaches, it's our duty to know enough about something in an area to have a conversation with an expert because we're trying to represent our students and what's best for our students. So I never wanted to give away complete power. Okay, maybe that's an ego thing. But but then I thought, this progression of learning certainly went more into the psychology side for sure. And then different influences from Navy SEALs to Dr. Joe Dispenza, which was a big part of, just the book title, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. It was just came to me like, hey, we can learn new behaviors. We can rewire things. And that was fascinating to me because we work on golf swings to rewire their physical movements. Right. Yet I feel you got to rewire the mental side first.
Yeah, there's no doubt. So where do you think, and this would kind of take us back a little bit to your childhood and then your brief background as we go forward, which I think everybody probably knows the story by now, since your sudden fame, I guess. Right. I don't know. Isn't it crazy? You've been great for 30 years, and now you're finally well known, which is ridiculous. But who do you think pushed you in that direction? How did you get that drive of having that personal development and continuous learning gene, as I call it? Was it something with your parents, or was it somebody that influenced you maybe coming up through your childhood?
Yeah, that's a tough one because my mom and dad looked at sports a little bit differently. My mom was unconditional love, just go out and have fun, stuff like that. My dad was a hard charger. He was a football coach in his background, and it was about winning, and it was about getting better, and it was very outcome oriented. And so I think that led to this weird in my mind because my dad's and I've talked to my dad about this, so it's not a big thing. Is he pushed me really, really hard, and I think what that helped me do is produce discipline, work ethic. Now at times that may have led to perfectionism and trying to be perfect to get
counseling.
Right. It's well, if I don't do something well, then my dad's not going to like me. I mean, that's how it got, right? I
understand. Yeah.
And so I had to be honest with myself there. So the personal development side, I think, came from a little bit of pain, Let's be honest.
Sure.
I don't like this feeling I'm having. But a lot of it was, again, back to performance, is I think this can help me. Now, again, I was using it strictly for sports at first. It was this drive like, hey, I want to get better at this. I have goals with this. And then later on, it becomes more of the actual development as a person. It was strictly for sports to begin with. And I think that was the drive of my dad to always push. And that was just another puzzle piece in that puzzle.
Yeah, again, similar story on my end, where my dad wasn't real happy that I quit football and to play golf in high school because it was the same season. Right. I had to make a decision. It kind of worked out, I think. I don't think I was going to be a linebacker in the NFL, but but again, it pushes you. You almost have to have that much adversity to kind of push you into a direction that. And when you find something you're passionate about, you're gonna dig in, like reading a lot of books. And for me, I read tons of books and listened to audio tapes of Tony Robbins and Wayne Dyer. Exactly. I mean, all these guys that you've talked about. I mean, it's just amazing. The similar nature and sort of our upbringings. But I know you've talked about, and speaking of adversity, failures tend to kind of spur us on to later success. So I know one failure that you talk about a lot that sort of gave you a push in a direction. Speak on that a little bit, and then maybe another of one of your favorite failures that you can maybe share with the audience about maybe your career or your life. Sure. That set you up for later success or maybe taught you a lesson. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, we have these moments in our life where at the time are very painful, and yet, as you've talked about, is that those actually can be the most important elements to put me in a different path. Yes. And so I was not much of a junior golfer. I was a football player like yourself. I quit after the first year of high school football and went all in on golf. So I was a very average junior golfer, but my goal was to play college golf. I was given the opportunity to try to walk on at a Division I school called Cal State Northridge out here in the LA area. And I was kind of naive because I honestly didn't know how good you had to be. But I worked really hard. I did. And I got to that point. We had 4 rounds and they were only take 1 walk on. And it came down literally to the last hole where I was tied for the lead. And it was a par 5 that I went for in 2. And I dumped the second shot into the water. And at that moment, it clicked something in my head like, wait, for 71 holes, you were in complete control of your game. You were under par. You were obviously competing at a high level with this other player to get onto this last spot. And there was like 12 guys going out for it, but it became him and me at the end. But instead of the old me blaming my swing, well, it's a swing error. I got to go hit another gazillion balls. It finally worked like, no. You were in a completely different state there. You were nervous. You were nervous in a bad way. You were focusing on don't go in the water. You were, you weren't in control anymore. And that, of course, I didn't now make the team. I dumped it in the water. I made double. And he said, sorry, Rick, you gave it a good chance, but I can only take 1 guy. That led me down these other paths that we're talking about in a very deep dive method. And I was fortunate that he allowed me the following year to try out for the team again. And that time I did succeed and earned a scholarship, got to play D1 level. But if that doesn't happen, I don't think I go down the same road, to be honest with you, because I think I would have been comfortable. It's like, yes, it's all about the swing. I made the team. But this showed me a part of performance that I hadn't experienced before. So from a golf standpoint, that is the one that stuck with me. And I'm grateful for that now, because I love talking about that with junior golfers and college players and professional, is that what is that gap of performance could be mental and emotional, and it can be trained, just like all these people that are banging balls, their physical side. We can do that with our mental emotional. I think when I look at my career, I have gone down some different paths because I think, like you, I want to service, I want to help as many people as possible. And I've gone down the corporate speaking route and tried to be somebody I wasn't. And my wife tells me all the time, you don't need to be Tony Robbins. There's already Tony Robbins. Just be the best Rick Sessinghouse. Mm-hmm. And that has stayed with me, because when I come across trying to be somebody else, people look right through it. Okay. But I've learned now in the last 10 years, who I am has some value and some service. And so that's, I say, about 10 to 12 years ago when I went down the corporate speaking route. It didn't work because it wasn't authentic to who I was. And that was my big, I wouldn't call it a failure, but that was a big learning for me. Not everybody's going to like me, and I'm okay with that now. Mm-hmm. But I want to make sure it's me who's going out there, and it's my energy, and it's how I like to view things. So that would be probably my other little path.
So are you not doing as much speaking now, or what are you just saying you've shifted maybe what you talk about?
Correct, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm still doing it, but it's more of the message that I want to came across, not what I think I'm supposed to talk about. That's different. Yeah. And I went down there, there's supposed to be this, and it's like, and then I had a speaker coach at the time said, God, when you talk about golf performance and mental performance in golf, no problem.
It's
now
easy.
You start talking about business and stuff like that, and you're trying to, it's like, it just wasn't congruent to me. And so I know what my strengths are.
Yeah, no, I think it makes perfect sense. And that's great kind of lead into my next question and topic was, I know you've written a book and I know you're working on another book. Talk about maybe just a brief description of the process, because I think like a lot of us top coaches, we maybe think about writing a book. I've written about 3 or 4 like 3/4 books, and like I just stop and say by a year later I'm like, I don't even believe in this crap. I'm like I can't get past the fact that I'm evolving, and like I don't, it's just it was so frustrating. That, and then how that led you into public speaking, and I have some follow-up questions about your public speaking, because I think you're a fantastic speaker.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, the book was interesting. For my doctorate, you had a choice of final project. You could do this research project, or you could publish a book. And I said, awesome, I've always wanted to write a book. It now gives me more motivation to finish it. That way I can now finish my studies. And so I think I already had a good built-in motivation for that. I would say at the start, even the second book, by the way, is similar. I got gangbuster, right? Yeah. Oh my gosh, full outlines done. Okay, let's go. And then if I become too self-critical of what people are going to think about it, you actually said something
that's me
has stopped me. Is like, is this still going to be relevant 10 years ago?
Yes,
there could be a new trend. And it's like, I remember getting roasted on YouTube like 12 years ago before we knew the ball flight laws, the new ball flight laws.
Yeah.
And I'm doing this simple thing about how to curve a ball. And now people are roasting me. Doesn't this guy know that the club face is, I'm like, not back then. I didn't.
Right. Yeah.
So back to like the book is that I had a good process. I go macro to micro. I think of big picture stuff and then brew it in. Now I'm proud of my first book. It reads a little bit more like a textbook. It reads a little bit more like, bullet points, and I understand that. And so when I finished, I was proud of it. And I think it still reads well, and I'm not, I wouldn't change much to it. But this next book that I'm writing, I actually hired a book coach. I hired a coach because he read the first book. He says it's good, but for what I want the second book to be about, it can't be the same style. And I knew where he was going with this is I need to create more stories. I need to create,
I was about to say.
Because people are going to remember a story than they are the facts. And so he's pushing me now to think back at my teaching, the stuff that I've done with Colin, that stuff that I've done in corporate, and now those become the theme more of the book than me just regurgitating, here's the 10 steps to focus and stuff like that. And I get that. So I'm really excited about this next process. I'm going through it right now. The whole thing's outlined and we're going through chapter by chapter, but now I'm outside my comfort zone because there's a little more creativity in stories. And there's a part of my voice that says, who gives a damn about this? Or are they really going to care what the story is? Some won't, but I'm hoping some will and see some value out of that. So that's been the struggle with the book writing. And then my undergrad was in speech communication, and I've always I've enjoyed public speaking. And I think as I get passionate about a subject, it's very natural for me.
Sure.
But I've certainly gone through the more technical side of how you're supposed to give a speech and those type of things. And I kind of throw most of that stuff out the window right now. I just want to be authentic and create energy and communicate the message for the audience.
Yeah, I think that's because you've done it so many times. Like, but think back to the beginning, because I know that was one of the things when I was a young coach. I was very awkward and shy, very backwards. You would never know it now. You can't get me to shut up, but it's it was something that when I set my goals as being a top coach and doing this and this and this, my boss said, "Well, you're going to have to do better at presenting." Right? I mean, I feel like every lesson that we give is a presentation to one person, but you got to be. I came up in a golf school where you got to give talks to like a lot of people, and then started giving bigger and bigger crowds. So I had to practice, my boss thankfully pushed me out of my comfort zone, sent me to Toastmasters, a lot of training. So that's what I was curious did you have any formal training? And then sort of how do you go about maybe putting together one of your talks?
Sure. Yeah. So I did have some formal training. I mean, my undergrad in speech communication, you certainly did different speeches and you did a little bit of debate and you got to understand some formalized. But I think what changed my speaking was two main things. One is I studied something called NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, which Tony Robbins kind of made famous.
Right.
And I went through some certification on that. And one of them was literally presenting. And so we did 7 days of intensive of how, again, communication is the response you elicit. Okay, so if I tell a joke all the time about when my son now is 17 years old, but when he was like 8 or 9, I would say, Grant, pick up your room. Nothing would happen. So did I communicate anything? I didn't get the response I wanted.
You say it was too heavy?
So then I would raise the voice. Grant, pick up your room. Nothing happened. So then I would come storming in, Grant, pick up your room now. And he goes, oh, I didn't know you wanted to do it now. So you learn that communication is not me just telling somebody something. Mm-hmm. What is the actual response I'm getting is actually more the measurement. Is communication actually occurring? So that's part of when even for my book or for a speech, I use something called a format system, which is I need to tell somebody what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to tell them why it's important for them to listen about it, how they can apply it, and then the last one is what if. These are those skeptical people who are going to push back at me and say, hey, but what if this, and what if this, and what if this? If I have already structured a speech or an article or a book around that, I've basically hit all the different learning types. Because in golf, right, we can say, this is how you do it, grip. But other people, yeah, but why is that so important? Well, the grip controls the club face tells where the ball to go. Oh, but how do I do it? How do I actually put my hands on them? Yeah. Okay, and then you get the what ifs. Yeah, but I just saw on YouTube yesterday that somebody was cross-handed and they're a scratch cow, and they were. I go, I get that. Let's talk about those options. But so that's how I look at things. Because I may be somebody who's very much a how person, and I may only communicate how. But if I have somebody who's a why person, and I get this a lot, especially now with the techie stuff, they want to be analyzing everything and why. I better be able to answer them and be able to communicate to them. So I use what I call the format system to structure speeches. So each person in that room, if I have 100 people in the room, I'm at least talking to each one of them at some part of my speech, so I don't lose them.
Yeah, it just sounds like structuring a golf lesson. It's basically, exactly. I mean, that's what you just described, that's fantastic. That's great. So I know you've been. Actually, I want to ask you one more question about speaking.
Sure. Because
this is the first time I've asked somebody this. Is if you had to give a TED talk about a subject other than what you're known for, what you're an expert in, what would it be and why?
So I can't talk about flow states, right? That's what I'm obsessed with right now.
No flow state, no mental side of golf, and no swing instruction.
God, I don't know why this is bringing up an emotion for me. I would... It would be surrounding about being a junior athlete with the pressure put on me that don't take it so damn serious. So I would want to structure something that says, hey, let's enjoy this sport or sports as a kid. Let's not be obsessive to make it where it's your life and your identity. That's what I would talk about.
I love that. Yeah, that would fall in that self-awareness category, right? And I think that we talk a lot about that. I talk a lot about that, but it's difficult to train, isn't it? It's difficult to get somebody, a young person that, like, I mean, we're going to talk a lot about juniors in a little bit, but what are some of the things, like, basically speak on that subject and what that means, what's self-awareness mean to you? And then how do you try to impart that in your students or maybe in your kids or whatever? But I think it's such a big word and something that's worth exploring.
Yeah. I mean, the word that pops in my head right now is perspective. Right. And as parents and we get to coach juniors, we have a different perspective than they do. And I'm not saying that they should take on my perspective. That's not the point. Yeah. But when I get a 14-year-old who does poorly in a tournament and they think, oh my gosh, the college coaches aren't going to recruit me anymore. And I'm going, one, you're 14 years old. And two, there's a lot of golf to be played, but their perspective is thrown out the window. Quick story, I was working with a player not on the PGA Tour, but a major tour, and they were playing in a pretty nice spot. I think that tournament was in the Bahamas, and there was some complaining happening on our coaching call. And I get it. Hey, I shoot bad. I want to throw my clubs in the lake. But I go, where are you at again? And I've loaded question. Oh, yeah, I'm at this resort. And I go, oh, look outside right now. What do you see? Oh, I see the ocean. I go, oh, that sucks, doesn't it? And I would kind of, in a way, try to shift their perspective. Like, hey, I understand you want to play well at golf, but there's thousands of people who would like to be in your spot right now. So let's look at it differently. Let's go. I have an opportunity to play on this beautiful golf course in this beautiful part of the world, and let's shift that perspective. Now, he got it. But I know we're still about outcome. But I want to question. I ask a lot of questions from people, and I want them to come up with their own perspective shift, right? And hey, how could we, if we just played horribly as a 14-year-old, how can we learn from that? What do you mean? Well, we don't want this to happen again, right? And it's like, hey, this could be the best learning opportunity for us, right? And I may share my stuff of my failures as a golfer, right? So I think I certainly give them experiences that I've had, but they're always a different way to look at it. Like with my family, I have 3 kids. We've tried to, not always perfect, give them a different perspective. I used to teach golf to the Special Olympics for 10 years. My wife is very much involved with charities here in our area, and we want them involved with that. There's a different perspective saying, maybe I don't have it that bad anymore, right? And I'm complaining about that. So that's how I would kind of answer that question.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I mean, it's sometimes important for us being older, or not as old as we feel maybe sometimes, but that we look at things through a different lens, right? I mean, we know how we felt when we were 14, but the kids get tired of us telling them like, well, this is how I did it, or the guys that work for me, you're trying to mentor, and I'm sure you're doing a lot of mentoring out there for the young professionals. And it's like, you got to almost look at it from their perspective, because things have changed a tremendous amount with the internet and social media. And I know I've tried to embrace it, but sometimes I have to take a step back and say, all right, I can understand your side and your point of view, why you're going about it that way. So let's dig into that. I want to help junior golfers out there. I want to help junior parents, and there's not a better story than Colin. Because he seems like the perfect child, right? and it's such, and obviously your influence has been the majority of that, and you've coached him since he was 8 years old. So talk a little bit about his maturity, and then I've got some follow-up questions here, but just how you guys met, and for those that haven't heard the story, and then how he sort of progressed up through the ranks.
Sure, yeah. I love to talk about the story, right?
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I was at the time teaching at a golf course called Shoal Canyon Golf Course in Glendale. It's this executive course, a beautiful range up top in the Glendale Hills looking over Los Angeles. And I had my spot on my range like I always do. I do remember this. People don't. I do remember him and his
I
father.
hope you remember this one.
He came to me, his father, Blaine, who's awesome, and said, Rick, don't want to bother you. I was wondering if you might want to work with my son. I heard you work with a lot of good juniors, and he's just very humble and stuff like that. And I go, well, sure, yeah, of course. I work with tournament juniors and stuff like that. And here's an 8-year-old. He comes on in. He's got his little clubs, right? And he hits a few shots for me. And I think it took one swing for me to say, yeah, I'll work with him. So he already had a natural swing, and we've worked with plenty of juniors who had talent. Okay, you have to have talent. Okay, so he had a great baseline already. He had taken group lessons. He loved to play. He was out there, and I think what progressed was, other than probably when he was 16, 17, were there, and major is too strong of a word. Did we make swing changes because of ball flight changes and just maturity of physical, right? They have different strengths and flexibilities as they get older. But what I love, and again, one of my coaching philosophies is, does the talent or does the skill translate on the golf course? So I was, because of the facilities I was at also, because one of the facilities didn't even have a driving range, my lessons were on the golf course. And so him and his dad were in the cart with me, and we are hitting 3 shots from all these different locations. We are talking certainly about mechanics, what you would do in this situation, but I'm also planting a seed of making decisions and risk reward and what we would do here and finding out, let's experiment with this. And he embraced it. Okay. Now, not all juniors embrace it.
I was going to say, you guys are a perfect match, right? I mean, a lot of kids would be like, well, when are we going to work on our swing, right? I mean, but
what are my TrackMan numbers?
Yeah, there you go. Like that's awesome that he kind of bought into your philosophy, which
Correct.
says a lot about your coaching and obviously that relationship you've built.
And that's the key part, is the trust. And now, if I got lousy results with him, I would have been let go.
There you go.
But once the results kept going at a good clip, the parents trusted me. They saw how I worked with him. He responded well to me, and now a relationship is happening, right? And we are so fortunate in what we do that we get to have relationships of what started off as students. Now they're great friends, and now I'm part of a family with him and his family, and going through all the stuff. And he was just over at my house the other day, and I mean, so that means a lot to me. And yes, his success is fantastic. So as he progressed, my philosophy is in junior development is trying to think 1 to 2, maybe sometimes 3 years ahead. Okay. And what I mean by that is that I get most parents, which now stems to most juniors, are obsessed with what happened this last weekend in my U.S. Kids Tour. I get that's important. Please, I'm not trying to diminish that. But then it's like, hey, Rick, he shot 84. He needs to break 80 next week. It's like, okay. But little Johnny didn't do what I told him the last 2 weeks when I talked about practicing this, because you guys were obsessed with a quick fix. And so when the quick fix keep happening, it's not much progress happening. But if I can tell Colin ahead of time, I said, hey, you're a 12-year-old, 15-year-old, probably going to maybe get to play in some HAGA events. Here in Southern California, we have something called the Toyota Tour Cup. That's where we're going to take you, right? Here's some of the things you're going to need to learn how to play. You're going to be playing on greens that are firmer. We're going to have more shots around the greens to deal with flop shots. You're going to hit a little further. But guess what? When you're 15 and everybody else is 17, 18, we're going to have to hit long irons better, because you're going to have longer distances in. So I'm already trying to prep him for what's to come. And he's goal-oriented, and he is a learner. He loves to learn. And so we were a perfect match, because I'm curious and I'm learning. He's learning. And I always, and this is for all my students, open up questions all the time. If there's something that confuses you or you think I'm full of crap, challenge me. Let me know. Right. Because I want to make sure you are clear on what we're doing. So I was so fortunate that the parents trusted me. He trusted me. And we had good success. A quick little funny story is, now that we look back, I was giving a junior summit the other day and talked about that Colin never won an AJGA event. right?
Really?
And so
you won at every other level, right? After that.
So we joke now. I go, Colin, do you think you could win an AJG event now? He goes, I think I do pretty good. I think so, right? Yeah. But back to the parents.
Yeah.
Oh my God, my kid hasn't won this, and I go, well, Colin never won that. And they go, no. I go, you can look it up. Colin never won an AJG.
And he was
event.
the number one amateur in the world. So it's like he.
There's different ways to get to the end goal, but let's not lose sight of that. So back to perspective, that's what I said, because they go, Colin must have won every event. I go, no, he won small percentage. But he was always getting a little bit better every single year. And then boom, it's like when he was 16, 17, he wins the junior Western amateur, and that was kind of that trigger of him believing he could win at a national level. Mm-hmm. We knew his game now was good enough to one, travel, to go East Coast, be on a difficult golf course, and great competition. So we now had met one of our benchmarks, right?
Right.
It didn't mean he had to win all the time. We just wanted to see, could he contend with the best players? We checked that box. And then we look forward to the success that he had in college. And his last year of college, we looked at that as a year to prep for the tour.
Right.
You don't know what's going to happen, but you knew with his resume he was going to get some sponsors exemptions. It's like, we better take care of those things, right? We better get the most out of that. And there's no guarantees, my gosh. But we did all the equipment and fitness stuff. We experimented with all of that a year ahead of when he turned pro. We wanted him not to have any other variables to be thinking about.
I love that, looking ahead, because, I mean, it's tough. I mean, I'm sort of dealing with that right now with a lot of my kids that might have been really good at like 10 or 11. Mm. At 12 to 14, they start growing. Their bodies are changing, as you know. Like that was the one question that I was curious about with Colin.
Yes.
Was there ever a downturn, or was there ever like a memory of like when he struggled a little bit, and then how you guys dealt with that and how you sort of pushed him on to say, all right, well, this is what's going to happen. And also, like, his golf swing is ridiculous, like, as far as just how good it's like aesthetically very pleasing. Not to say that's everything, as you know, there's a lot of different ways to get it done, but I was just curious, like, what are some of the swing changes maybe you had to make as him coming up through those formative years?
Sure.
If any.
Yeah. There was a time when he was probably 15, 16, and then another time when he was going into college and there were similar issues. It has to do with the physical part of it, right?
Right.
So when you get a young kid, they're highly flexible and not necessarily strong. Their stability's not there, mobility's off the charts. And we tend to get juniors that they're going to drop it, they're going to get shallow, they're going to tilt, and then they're going to come path into out and flip it, right? And so he was draw biased for a long time.
Yeah, I could see that.
I didn't try to make him something. I was going, he's got great club face control. He always has. Okay.
That lead wrist, like, from early transition, is like the best I've ever seen.
It's awesome, right?
Did you teach him that? Do you remember, like, teaching him to flex the lead wrist in early transition, or is that something he just sort of developed?
Can I take credit for that, even though it
absolutely
had nothing to
I'd be like, we worked on that for hours. I mean, it's like, you should have seen how cuppy this kid was at 12, man. I was getting him to flex and motorcycle and everything else. But I mean, I love that part. It's my favorite part of his golf swing, and the way he can flex it and then still cut it, which is amazing, the way to play golf.
Yeah, so,
I think it's the tour way.
So here's the thing. No, I did not teach him to do that. But I did tell him several lessons, because he has a slightly a slightly weak left hand grip.
Yeah,
okay?
That's why
slightly
it matches
strong
up so
right
well.
Grip.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I get a lot of people, he is so shut at the top. I go, he's not really shut at the top. If you really look at the leading edge of the club, I said, and I told Colin this several times, because we'd have him at Impact on video, right? You just see this wrist just perfect. I go,
oh yeah.
Of course I want to be with you forever, but if anybody screws with that, you walk away. Okay? Yeah. Because we talk about Impact so much, and I got somebody who was at Impact with that wrist. I'm going, holy smokes. I said, this is awesome. He had great ball flight control. He could hit his window real well at an early age. I mean, we're talking that teen type. Mm-hmm. But I wasn't concerned with the bow, and this is before it's now become kind of vogue. All I cared about was club face control through Impact.
Right.
and he had it. So I would do a ton of punch shots with him, certainly like that. He tended to exit more left than some of my other players. That's why he could transition to the cut, I think, a little bit easier. But he was a draw bias because he couldn't really neutralize his plane on the way down because his hip would slide. He had a left weak left glute muscle. So as he came through that, he would sag. That would tilt him more, which now got him under plane more. Right. So I can't say, hey, you're not supposed to do that. The body wouldn't allow him to do it. But as he got stronger, we got some fitness as a 15, 16, 17-year-old. We started to neutralize the plane a little bit more. And then finally, as he's, I don't know the exact date. I want to say it's the first year of college. We kind of had this discussion like, okay, we're now obviously stronger. We've matured a little bit more physically. What's the ball flight you want? And he goes, gosh, Rick, I like seeing cuts.
I was going to say, when did you transition to that cut? That's a great
lead. So it went from obviously somebody who's shallow to has to hit draws to I start to neutralize it a little bit more and the draw is very baby to now we're now making a decision. What do you want to see in play? I do not have a bias on this, everybody, okay? But the player who says, I like to see cut and I feel cuts, ding, 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 right? I have something that I can work with. I said, well, here's what's going to have to occur. We're going to have to change a little bit of the plane on the way down. We're not going to be as tilty. We're going to get you stronger in the core. We're going to rotate a little bit more instead of slide. So, and it didn't lead to much of a downturn, I'll be honest with you.
That's awesome. Yeah,
he picked up on it fairly quick, but if we saw, there wasn't major changes, but fundamentally we are talking about changing a ball flight. That is major.
It is.
And so once he locked into it, it was then floodgates would open.
It held up pretty well at the PGA, that little cut driver. For when he hit, was it 16? That was like the best shot I've ever seen under pressure, God. I think, in my life.
So exciting. So I, as a player gets older, we're talking junior here, yes. I let them dictate more of the lessons and the progress because they're the one playing it. They're playing the game. I want them to know what's comfortable for them. I want to know what's their visual that they like to see. I am not a system teacher where everybody has to hit draws or everybody hits fades. I have some players that play on the Japan tour right now. He hits draws. He hits it great. Okay? I'm not going to mess with that. So I think we have to be careful of trends and everybody's doing this and now everybody's got to do this because Colin does it or DJ does it. It's like, that's going to take some work. If you're here, it could get ugly for a while. So I try to match up things is what I try to do the best.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. That's always interesting to hear, kind of that it can't be perfect all the time. You know what I'm saying? Like you guys, the coaches are the ones that are sweating. Going, man, I'm going to make this change. I just hope I don't ruin this kid. I know I'm the same way. So what about now, like in his development now as a professional? Obviously he's like amazingly consistent when he got on tour. He makes 22 cuts in a row.
Yes.
Guys won 3 times already. It's like ridiculous. Like, is it mainly mental stuff that you're working on? I know you're helping him prep for tournaments.
Yeah.
What are his tendencies kind of the same as far as his golf swing when he was
Definitely.
A junior and now, would you say?
Yeah, well, I'd say that the tendencies with the swing they are actually similar. He'll still tilt a little bit. He'll hit a weak right shot every now and then that he does not like and I do not like.
Right.
So we try to keep him not only level but centered. And
a little more on top of it.
Correct, exactly. Yeah. So he feels over it. He stays in that posture. He's always kind of exited low anyways. But when we get rotational based, he hits a lot of great shots. When he gets tilty, we got problems. Gets very spinny with the driver and stuff like that. It's interesting is we're always assessing as we go. It's been an unbelievable journey, and his hard work and his dedication, his mindset. I've been blown away also of the importance of a caddy. His caddy JJ is unbelievable. He is so well prepared. He's professional, and he's been a key element of all of this. He helps me prep better. It's like, oh, wow, I didn't see it that way. Oh, cool. Yeah. So we have a good team chemistry, which I think is vital. And I think what we're learning from the first year, now 17 months, whatever it is now, of, does the game travel, the different grasses, and stuff like that. Now it's getting into some pretty cool, fun stuff, right? The details of, like, we've been bouncing around a lot through this summer, and he's changing wedges a lot. And TaylorMade has been fantastic with creating new grinds and stuff like that. So we're learning about stuff we honestly had talked about much in college. But there's certain courses, if you're not playing the correct kind of wedge with the correct kind of balance, you're doing yourself a disservice. So those are the little things that I'm even learning from an equipment standpoint that I never did before. I think preparation has, I think we're kind of locked into a pretty good thing right now. I made the mistake as a coach when he plays as an amateur at Bay Hill. We were excited. Okay, so let's put that out there. Yeah. And we were just out sight the whole day, and we're hitting 18 holes, and let's go hit some balls, and let's go to lunch, and let's go. And he made the cut, luckily. But afterwards, he's like, "I'm so damn tired.
I'm exhausted." Yeah, energy is a big deal out there.
I'm going, uh-oh. So that's my failure as a coach, to not look at recovery in that. Now, we're big into that, and we have a pretty much set routine Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. He feels ready to go, and Sunday, I don't think I've heard, I don't remember him ever saying I'm tired now. So we've helped with that. But yeah, I'm certainly talking about the mental side. We're talking about preparation, putting every now and then. We're going to work on a few things. We worked a little on chipping in Vegas. So it's always refining, isn't it? Yes. And we get all these stats now, and I got to be able to look at these stats and go, what the heck do they mean? And I don't want to go down too much of that rabbit hole, but I think it's information, certainly. But Colin, and I trust Colin, he's going to tell me what's really happening. It's like, if I say, hey, your stats from here to here, you go, nah, I'm fine with that. Okay, great. I'm not going to push him too much, but we do always want to have answers, though. Yes. And that's where I think JJ's influence has been important. I think we've learned how to prepare better, certainly learned how to travel. All those type of things is great. But to be honest with you, we've always tried to prep that each event is one to win. One event is not more important than another. And I know people don't believe me that. Well, PGA, you must have done different things. I said, actually, that was probably the simplest preparation we did all summer, because my role that week was to say, hey, good shot, good shot, good shot. Because
he's just striping it.
he was hitting it good. And more importantly, though, mentally, he was very comfortable and he was very locked in. Okay. So we got to that straight. Nice week to do it, right? But absolutely, when he went at work day, it was a little different. We actually were working on his swing the day before. We had some connection issues. He was getting his left arm a little high on the way back. It's leading to a little bit steeper. We did a glove drill underneath, simple, right? Yeah. And Nick Faldo on the telecast would see Colin, put his right hand underneath his left arm as if the shirt is going in there, and going, oh, he must be working on connection. You're right, Nick. He was. Yeah. And so he had a swing thought that week, and he won. So there's different ways to win, and we're not going to be 100% every week. But our processes and our way of preparing, we would like to think they're similar, so we don't add too many variables to the equation.
Yeah, that's great. Who have been some of your influences on the technical side of the golf swing? Anybody that's mentored you, or like who have you learned from?
Interesting. Yeah, I was obsessed with the swing coming out of college and during college, thinking, hey, it's all about a perfect golf swing. And I studied a lot of David Ledbetter stuff. Never got to meet him or anything like that. Worked with some coaches who were through that system. I liked it. I thought it was very beneficial for me. I took a 3-day with Mac O'Grady. And so that was 20 years ago. And I thought that had a good foundation for me to understand causes and effect.
Right.
And I think from that, it was more of my deep dive of looking at what works and kind of reverse engineering from that. And then honestly, as I've gotten more in the mental side, I don't pay much attention to the swing stuff.
No, you're deep in the other side for sure. But it's cool that you're able to, like you said, kind of be a jack of all trades with your players, because you're well rounded and you got to stay up with at least some of the stuff, so you don't get, like you said, you don't get left behind, right? So that's really awesome. Yeah,
and on those lines, I mean, I'm not saying I understand TrackMan, I understand force plates, I understand different swing methods and stuff like that. But what I have learned about me as a coach is that I'm looking at what happens on a golf course could be a mental or a physical error. And I need to be able to decipher which one it is. And I want my player to be aware, back to the the word awareness, right? I want them to be aware enough of, was that shot that missed the green 30 yards left, was that a mental error or physical error? Well, the old swing coach in me would, of course, say it's 100% physical. The club face was this, the ball went there. Of course, Rick, what are you talking about? Not so quickly, because I believe our state that we're in, our mental emotional state, will dictate the physical behavior. And I'm trying to make people aware of, was I fully committed to that shot in the first place? Was I calm? Was I really ready? And when people are honest with that, now we have a breakthrough. Now we can go somewhere with this. So
yeah, that's awesome, and you're such a pro. You're leading me right through all my notes here, because that's something that me and my staff have really tried to improve in our coaching. Right, there's a difference between teaching and coaching, I think. Yes. And we're trying to be better coaches. So we've spent a lot of time with like Ian Highfield from Game Like Training.
Great.
Carl Morris, these guys like yourself that are really experts in that field. So we're spending more time on the golf course with our players. But one of the big words that we use, probably 50 times a day, is intention. Right? So
I love it.
We talk about, like you said, we can see the physical error of the ball flight, but then asking that very important question after that, in that sort of reflection stage of what was your intention. And I think it just blows my mind, and I want to get your take on this. Perfect example today. I have one of my players that just an average club guy, great guy, just sort of a weekend golfer, comes in for a lesson. I see him every couple weeks. He's warming up. He's striping it. Everything looks pretty good. I flip on the virtual TrackMan. I'm like, all right, cool, let's test it. You get 5 balls. I'm going to give him a target and a green. And I said, your goal is to hit 3 out of 5 on the green. He shanks the first 3. And I'm sitting there going, all right, what were you thinking about? Couldn't tell me, right? So it was just the intention of what we were doing in sort of a block practice situation completely flipped when we actually put it in play. Yes. So give me your thoughts on that and how you train that. I guess obviously intention, focus, all that stuff that you're going to talk to your players about. How do you work them through to get into flow, the flow state, right?
There we go.
So give me some good stuff on that.
So if we just look at some basics with flow, we know flow follows focus. So what I pay attention to is my number one skill, and probably the number one skill, the most important skill. What am I paying attention to? Is that relevant in the present moment? Okay. Next, as I'm ready to perform something, you talked about intention. I can have an intention that I want to hit a 7-iron 172 yards with a baby draw that's going to go 3 feet to the left. It's going to spin off that slope and go close to it. That could be an intention of outcome.
Right.
But I also could have an intention of, oh, I can't wait to hit this shot. I am so excited to hit this shot so close, and put a big smile on my face, look at my guys and say, hey, you beat that, right? Or I have an intention of being calm, and I have an intention of being laser-like. I have an intention of being confident, like I'm Tiger prowling down anything. There could be many different answers to that word intention. But as coaches, you're right. We're trying to ask the question and then go, would that intention lead to what our outcome would be, or would it get away from it? Then, if they're now more aware, like, yeah, Rick, I have this intention, and then you flip the stimulus. In this case, I'm going to put you on TrackMan.
Changing the environment. That's all we're doing, right?
Right. Is that now what's the interference that gets in the way of the intention? So I rarely use the word positive and negative, but I'll use the word interference a lot. It's you were just striping it on the range. What was your intention? Well, we've been working on this nice smooth finish, and I was thinking it's about smooth finish. Oh, we got some pretty good results, didn't we? Oh, yeah, coach, we did it. Okay. Now, when you were on TrackMan, what was your attention on? Well, you were going to now see how good it was, and I didn't want to embarrass myself, and oh my gosh, if this is a similar, and now it's like, what was the intention about the smooth finish? No, it was about you measuring this, and it's like, so we just put on this little TrackMan thing, and now that changed your attention first. Your focus went to something else. which now, of course, made the intention go away because all you want to do is not embarrass yourself or hope this works. And now we have a thought that creates an emotional trigger and a reaction. And now we have anxiety and the head's going this way, and then we have tension in the left hand, and the arm gets away and the hosel hits the ball. So I try to help people understand the cause and effect. Starts with, the ball does what the club tells it to do. Totally get it. You tell the club what to do. The mind tells the body what to do. So let's make sure that we have clear intention. And that's why we talked earlier about identity stuff, is that if I can have somebody who says, I'm going to be committed to my shots, which tends to be a process goal for my players. I'm committed to my shots. I would always follow it up with, what in your routine helps you the most commit to a shot? Now, I get different answers. I 3 basic answers I get is, Rick, it's super important in my pre-shot routine to take all the variables in and make a decision. I go, great. So you better take the time to take the variables in, analyze, and make a decision. Great. The second one tends to be, hey, Rick, for me to commit to that shot, I need to see the shot successfully. So guess what? Visualization becomes vitally important. So guess what? Your intention for today is to visualize with as much clarity on every single shot. Okay, I get that. Then I have the other one, which is, what would a good shot feel like here? They're feel oriented. Gosh, if I could take a practice swing and feel it, all systems go. Great. Then you better be doing a damn practice swing with intention on every single pre-shot routine. So as a coach, like you said, I'm not telling them that they have to do all 3 of those, but even though it would be nice, I'm saying which one can we hang our hat on that's going to be the most important for you? And that is how I start to get intention with attention wrapped together. If that answers the question. Yeah,
no. So you're just, just like we're doing with everything, we're asking questions and getting the feedback and then testing it.
Correct.
To figure out whatever style, or I call it internal versus external awareness.
Exactly.
Of what they're, the stimulus they're responding to.
Sure.
That's fantastic. Yeah, that kind of answered the question. I was going to ask you sort of about, how do you like to train pre-shot routine, but that's exactly it. Is not everybody's routine is going to look the same. Bryson's isn't going to look like Collins, or, somebody more analytical versus a feel. You're going to see more rehearsal swings or whatever. But I think that's a really, really good way to kind of train people.
And on that, if I may add to the pre-shot routine, is I ask questions in a playing lesson. My favorite thing is to put balls in different spots, right? So let's imagine I've put a ball on an upslope lie in 3 inches of rough. Okay. I then ask a question, and I'm always baiting my students. We're going to bait them, right?
Absolutely. I'll do that.
so I said, tell me about this lie. This is a bad lie, Rick. I can't believe how bad lie. This is a. And I go, oh, interesting, because we want to make an opinion of the lie. But if I phrase the question, what in this lie, what in your swing, what in your approach may have to change based on that lie? Mm-hmm. I don't want to label it as a good lie or bad lie, by the way. That already creates an emotional trigger. That's a bad lie, I got screwed. Man. It's like, the ball's sitting down. We're on an upslope. What possibly could happen here? You may hit it fat. You may hit it left. Okay, let's think of those beforehand. So I'm trying to pose the question beforehand, and then that's what I did with Colin all the time. We throw 3 balls down, and we would go through these different scenarios, but I would not tell him how to do the first scenario. I would not tell him how you have to do this, ball back in stance. I would let him create something. Sometimes his creation was better than mine, by the way, and I learned.
Probably to a point where he could probably pull off anything, and you got kind of bored.
And I'm learning from going, man, I'm going to learn that for my other students, right?
How did you do that?
and I think that's part of giving back the power to the student, instead of back in the day, my first few years of teaching was do this, everybody does this, and you have to do it this way. And that's a disservice for me as a coach. Now the questions is, based on that lie, is there anything we have to change? What do you think the ball is going to do, right? And I'm being very present moment with questions and problem solving. So part of a flow state is certainly focus, but complexity of situation could get your attention, or a novelty of a situation. This looks new, I'm going to pay attention to it. Or risk is involved, that would maybe pay attention. So I'm trying to drive focus in what is in their control and what's relevant without opinions and without this and that. And I think that helps start the routine better, because I do still think you need to be aware of all those variables. Then if somebody's more visual or feel oriented, certainly you can do those different things to be able to commit to the shot.
Yeah, I heard you talk on another interview about challenge points, and I think it was like the 1% to 4% in getting them out of their comfort zone. Like that's something we're trying to do with our players, especially like our elite juniors. Do you have any preparatory games, like on-course games, or I know you've mentioned just dropping balls around, but is there anything else that's more structured that you've done with your players or with Colin coming up, or maybe something he's come up with? Because I always like to get my players to kind of make up their own game sometimes. Sure. Which is interesting. Anything you could share that would be valuable to coaches out there?
Yeah, I think in this thing, so when flow state has been researched, especially in the last few years, they notice there's a sweet spot where if I challenge somebody just enough outside their current skill set, 1% to 4%, we at least think it's realistic I could do it, but it would require all my skills to be utilized. That's a good thing. Okay? Yes. Flow is about challenge, actually. It's not when things are easy. We're challenging you. If I said, if I push somebody 25% past it, they would be anxious because it would be overwhelming. They go, I can't even do it anyway. So they would just check out. So that's the sweet spot. Now, what I've utilized a lot lately is statistics. So we know that juniors and all golfers, by the way, have unrealistic expectations. Okay.
Yes.
They have zero clue about actually how good they are. Okay. Because their ego gets in the way and they only remember the great shots and So I've used stuff from ShotLink and from other things to show these juniors. So, what would be an average shot for you from 100 yards from the middle of the fairway? About 8 feet. And I go, wow, you're better than any player who has ever played the game. That's awesome. And they look at me like, what? Because I can be a smartass sometimes with my players. And I go, I'll just show you the stat here. I think it's 14 feet, 10 inches or whatever. It's like, so you're better than these people.
Average on tour. Yeah.
Right.
I love it.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Yeah. So I may structure something at a range. Let's say the balls are decent and I have a 100-yard marker there. And with our radar or our gun, we could kind of look and create a circle that is 25 feet away, right? And they go, oh, that's easy. I go, okay, 10 balls, 8 out of 10, show me that. And then they don't do it. They go, huh. So I call it a reality check. So now they're like, wow, okay, maybe my expectations are too high. Now, it doesn't mean I don't want to get to the standard of 14 feet, 10 inches. I want to get to that standard eventually.
Yeah.
But it's unrealistic to compare yourself to that standard when you are so far away from it. So now the incremental changes of 1% could be, what's their baseline? Maybe it's 28 feet. Great. Let's see if we can do 27.6. And we can track it, right? That's what's great about TrackMan and combines, right? We can start tracking performance and giving somebody some benchmarks to work towards. So I would say that's more of what I do than per se a game. But there's certainly plenty of games. I've also learned a lot from Carl Morris too. He's been fantastic. It could be a game of 21. You throw 9 balls around a chipping area and you got to get up and down. You got to keep score, right? And 21 or best, you get to leave the chipping area and you're done. But 22, 23, you got to do it again, right? So there's consequence based in that. But 21 with 9 balls, that'd be pretty damn good, right? I mean, that would be, So those are the fun things. And you're right. I think inherently junior golfers do a great job when they're competing against their friends. They're already challenging themselves and there's already risk involved. Now, sometimes they screw around a little bit, but I don't mind that as long as they're engaged in a competition, they're going to pay attention. So even though that's not the answer of 1% to 4%, they are engaged that there's something on the line. I like when they can compete against each other a lot too.
Yeah, and I always recommend to my kids, like, go find a kid that you like that's better than you, right? That'll elevate your game. You might learn something. It'll push them a little bit. Yeah, I think that's really good. So in that sort of same camp of, junior golfers and then the junior golf parents, Colin's parents obviously were really good. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree in most cases. You're really good players and good kids tend to have really good parents. What characteristics did they show in supporting his career? And then what would you say are some of the do's and don'ts with junior golf parents? Because you probably don't know my story, but my son plays D1 golf right now. So I've been on both sides of it, and I made plenty of really, really bad mistakes as the parent. I'm a way better junior golf coach than a parent. So I kind of know the ins and outs of what I would have done differently. But what have you found as far as like the mistakes they make and then how they could be better?
Yeah. So I think with Colin specifically, there was the trust, there was the buy-in to me as a coach. That I feel grateful for that. Mm-hmm. But there was always reasonable expectations along the way. And they wanted to make sure Colin was enjoying it and Colin was enjoying our lessons. And so the enjoyment factor was a high value. Playing better golf was a high value too. Mm-hmm. But, near and dear to my heart is kind of what you're talking about with the other type of parent whose expectations are totally unrealistic. They base, I'm going to call it what it is, conditional love. I'm going to give you great attention when you shoot a slow score. When you shoot a high score, I'm not even going to talk to you, or I'm going to berate you for 3-putting the last hole. That hurts me. I'm a parent. That hurts me. So I talked to these parents. I said, hey, do you want people come to you at your job and you make a mistake? I can't believe you did that, right? You're not going to do that, right? You don't like your boss doing like that. You're doing this to a 12-year-old. They've got no emotional capacity to deal with what that means. So I try to create realistic expectations with the parent. And I have certain, kind of protocols. I said, you have every right as a parent to expect them to behave a certain way on the golf course. Okay?
Yeah,
like I was a club thrower. I was a jerk on the golf course right here. So my dad would say that's unacceptable. You're off the golf course. He has every right to do that. Okay? Now I 3-putt the last hole, and even though maybe the rest of the round was okay, and let's say my father says, I can't believe you 3-putted, you didn't finish well, I can't believe you, and it's this bombardment of failure that's all you're looking at, we have to be careful of that. So I call it a cool down period. I say, parents, no matter if they won, no matter if they shot 90, for an hour, there is no talking about golf. Okay? Yeah. And the next thing I took from Johnny Miller, so I don't want to take credit for this one, but ask 3 questions. Okay? What did you do well today? Okay? Did you have fun? Right? And what did you learn?
I like that.
Those are 3 pretty good questions, right? I focused with what did you do right first because we're all wired for negativity anyways. They're going to tell me the 3-putts. I know that. But if they could say, well, I did birdie that 6th hole. I hit that really good 5-iron. Oh, that was a pretty good shot. Good. At least I got him in that mindset. And then, did you have fun? And they could say, it was okay. Yeah, okay. Because I want to know, for most of us, we only have fun when we play well, don't we? So, But I'm trying to create another state. You can still have fun. You can be with your friends out there. You can see this beautiful area. You can still have fun. Doesn't mean you have to shoot 6 under par. But the last question is where I help I think parents the most, is just they ask the question. They don't tell. What did you learn today, little Johnny? Now, little Johnny may have great self-awareness. Like I had a player last night on a Zoom. He's a 13-year-old, and he blew me away with his awareness. Coach Rick, I got a little anxious on 17. I started thinking ahead of myself, and I noticed that my heart was going a little bit more, and I was thinking about the future too much, and I took a deep breath. I'm going, my head went, oh my gosh.
Wow.
What great self-awareness. He's using the tools we talk about. Awesome. Other times you say, what did you learn today? And they go, I don't know. I didn't hit my driver very good. Okay, well, that's a starting point at least, right?
Yeah.
Oh, what would you like to improve with your driver? Well, I hit it in the trees too much. Okay, so maybe we have to straighten it out. But I want the player to take ownership for it instead of the typical parent who has all the stats and said, you missed most of your fairways today, and your driver swing was horrible today.
Captain Obvious.
Now that you tell me, I'm really thinking about how bad my driver was. So I try to do a cool down period, and then I structure the questions in such a way. I also have post round assessment forms that on nowhere does it have the score. So I want to know, did we achieve our goals of the process? Did you achieve the goals of your pre-shot routine you told me you're going to be at? It did. Now you can certainly tell me, did that lead to an outcome you wanted? Great, because we want to know that. But if I'm just like, what did you shoot? What were your stats? Where did you finish in the tournament? Then, of course, outcome becomes just emblazoned in their head. And I understand that. results are important. They are. Yet at an early age, we have to be careful that that's the only thing we talk about. And, I've gotten some parents that will come back to me and say, hey, Rick, I just want to let you know, I am so proud of my son. He double bogeyed the first hole and he bounced back and he played a great round and I didn't see him throw clubs anymore. And I go, fantastic. That's what I want, is the behavior getting better. You highlight that with them. You tell them how proud you are that they bounce back. That's going to mean a lot more down the line.
Yeah, I think that's great. There's a lot of things that I try to stress to my kids, and I've again learned from that quiet moment where it's tough because I was the coach, right? I'm watching him like, hey, tell me about 16. He's like, I don't want to talk about it. It's like I learned pretty quick. It's like, all right, just let him come to me, and it makes it a lot better. I mean, it's I could write a book on that for sure. So one thing again. This podcast is obviously to help other coaches, and you have given some outstanding information. What would be your advice to like a young coach coming up through the ranks, or maybe a PGM student that comes to you and says, hey, Rick, what would you do to, if they know they want to go down the teaching route or even the mental game route? I mean, what would you tell them? And because the blueprints change. Again, looking at it from a different lens, how we did it, when we were in our 20s to now is much different. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, you used the word mentor earlier, and I didn't kind of give you a concrete that I had a mentor per se. I've had plenty of people who supported me, and I've certainly seeked out knowledge. So the first thing is to be curious and to be open to different ways of doing things. Okay. Mm-hmm. There by far is not one way to do anything. Even the mental game, I'm learning a ton of stuff. I was mentored in the mental game by Dr. Patrick Cohn, who's a great sports psychologist in Orlando. And I just actually got an email from him yesterday. I throw out ideas to him. He throws out ideas to me. He supported me throughout the years. I've known him, I think, for 15 years. Okay. And so that's been awesome. And so I think getting a mentor is important. Yes. I do. I think being open to a lot of different things is important because you don't know actually which path you want to end up going. I've told people that in the teaching or coaching business, I do believe it's important to specialize in something down the road, because I think when you have specialization skills and you're an expert in one area, a couple things happen. So I made a distinct effort probably 15 years ago to go down the mental route, and I created a brand called Golf's Mental Coach and all, and what I was trying to do is a couple things. If you're an expert in something, you get to charge more. Charge more, okay?
Yes.
That's a good thing. Yep. And two, you have less competition. So people all the time said, God, you must have all these mental game coaches in California. I go, no, I got maybe 3 or 4 that I know, okay? And guess what? Mental game is starting to go like this as far as people hiring. Yeah. And I have less competition, okay? Then, hey, how to fix your slice. It's a great thing. You should learn how to do that as a coach to start with, but you are now competing against 10,000 other coaches who fix a slice, okay? So I went, because the other part is the passion. I'm passionate about the mental game, and I believe passion is going to also lead to better coaching, which now leads to better results, which now leads to more referrals. I mean, the whole cycle keeps going. So it's not saying that you should go with a trend. Like you have people that are, let's say they're doing TrackMan or Radar. Oh, I'm supposed to have a TrackMan. I'm supposed to be an expert at that. But maybe that's not your passion. That'll come through. Have a passion about an expertise. There's a putting coach that I know here in California, and most passionate guy about putting. And I send people to him. I go, God, I love that guy's attitude. And he knows his stuff. So be open to learning, have a mentor, and then eventually I think you should specialize in something. Even if it's, I am developing 14 to 18 aged juniors to get college scholarship. That's a niche that is specific enough, that's an expertise that people will pay for.
Mm-hmm. You want to give that coach a shout out? Is it Preston?
Oh yeah, Preston Combs, you bet. Preston Combs.
I raised that boy.
I love it. I love him.
That's one of my good friends. Great stuff.
He's awesome.
Yeah, awesome. That's awesome. So before I give you the last question, is there any topic or anything that you would like to share? Any ask of the people out there?
Yeah, I think, and it comes across, I think, with my message is, I study something called a flow state, which is your optimal state you're in. I don't care if it's golf or in life. And I think, and I'm turning this kind of a little bit into life stuff, but with what's happened with COVID, it's challenged a lot of people. Their mental health, it's challenged people. There's depression. There's a lot of things that is much beyond golf right now. And I believe I have a purpose to help people think that there's other options now. And, a flow is a way of looking at things and creating goals and dealing with stress and stuff like that, and that I think is going to help people on and off the golf course. So I want people to understand that these skills that we talk about, yeah, you're going to hit better shots, you're going to shoot lower scores, but let's take them into the other parts of our life so we can enjoy that and have less stress and stuff going on.
I love it. So I lied. I got one more question before the big question.
Yeah.
So you were talking, I know you said that the Dr. Joe Dispenza's book, yes, and his philosophy sort of influenced you. Are there any other books that you've read, or I know there's hundreds, but I mean just a couple that come to mind, not about golf, but maybe about life or the mental side, that you would recommend somebody going out to get?
Wow. My mind is thinking.
Yeah, I know. I get that when I'm on the other side. Yeah, I always forget.
Right now, those are all books because we're redoing my back office. So
we're brothers.
Yeah, I know. I love it. I think I've certainly been influenced by a lot. I mean, Tony Robbins' Unlimited Power certainly was a book because it gave me more what I would call actual tools. Right. A lot of personal development. Exactly. A lot of personal development is just be positive. It's like, yeah. But I just three putted and I just hit the ball in the water and I'm not going to make another cut. Okay. Be positive. Okay. So I'm trying to use tools to now shift states. And that was probably the influential one now well over 20 years ago that I read that was about state management. So I loved that from a psychology standpoint, but that was the crux of that is how do you change your state. So that one, Dr. Joe, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. Gosh, I don't know why I'm blanking out on all the other ones.
You mentioned one on another podcast, some Navy SEAL stuff you were reading lately.
Yeah. So Mark Devine, who he has a website, and I've gone through some of his online stuff. Unbeatable Mind was his book. And now we're talking about stressful situations. We're talking about the most stressful situation you can be in is war. And my God, he is now articulating ways to be able to be calm and focused in that. And so I am not even close to a military guy, yet I could go, wow, this stuff is pretty cool. And so that's been a big influence. So thank you for reminding me, Mark Devine, Unbeatable Mind.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. So if you could have a gigantic billboard and we get a message out to millions and billions of people out to the world pre-election, what would your, and this could be a quote, it could be a mantra, it could be a couple, you could have a variety of billboards, as I say to most of my listeners, but what would be the message you would want to get out to the world and why?
Inside of you is all you need. It's all inside. Okay, so it's all inside. That would be the quote. Now, behind that is we certainly talked about influences and stuff like that has helped me. But guess what? I have to tap into something here to be able to put that into action. And I've talked about flow follows focus. So inside of me, I have the ability to focus on anything I want. So now I keep changing. This billboard is going to be very, very long. No,
that's okay. You got to. It's a big metaphorical billboard, so it can be as big as you want.
Yeah,
I need to change the question and make it like a Skywriter or something. I need to come
exactly
up with
right. But the font's like this, Rick. It's like, it's tiny. It's like, I think it's big. I have a big belief that inside of us we already have the tools. We may have external things help remind us that we need to use those tools, but I'm a big believer again that what I focus on expands. So what I focus on is where the energy goes.
I love it, man. That's such a beautiful way to close. And I can't thank you enough for your time and to get to know you. Hopefully our paths will cross. I can't believe they haven't in the past, but hopefully in the future, I would love to spend more time with you. How can the listeners reach out to you? I know you're not big on social, but I know you're on Instagram. I can't believe I wasn't following you. I apologize for that. Because I've known about you for forever, and I'm like, I don't know how I'm not following you, but
that's
yeah, I know, right? So it's like, how can people get a hold of you and say thank you or work with you?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, so my website is my full name, ricksessinghouse.com. I do very little on social media. I do some stuff on Instagram every now and then. I may be at a tournament with Colin and how we're prepping, and some people have really liked some of those things.
Yeah.
Facebook a little bit. It's just under my name, Rick Sessinghouse, for all the handles. I think I'm always open to learning and questions. So if you have some other question, please, my email is rick@ricksessinghouse.com. So I love helping people and I love learning. So contact me if you got something.
All right. Thanks so much, my man. You're the best, and keep doing all that you're doing for the game and for other people. It's inspiring.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.